Speaking of kind of we talked about Tampa being one of the potential best teams of the Cap era. This team, Boston Bruins, they weren't as decorated. They only won that one cup, but I think everyone would agree that they have been one of the best teams over the past 10 to 15 years.
Especially Leaf fans would agree, yeah.
Yeah, Leaf fans have nightmares still. And over the weekend, we got some pretty shocking news that maybe overseeing the end of this bit of a run that they've been on, because they fired Bruce Cassidy kind of out of nowhere. I thought this was a huge shock from the outside looking in.
I think everybody did. In 6 seasons as the head coach, he's made the playoffs all 6 years, has a record of 245, 108, and 46, with 6 playoff appearances in, objectively the hardest division in.
Yeah, it's one of the 2 hardest
in the NHL. They won a President's Trophy in 2019, I think, and that year they made the Cup final and lost in 7. He could have easily won a Cup that year, right? The bounces went St. Louis's way, and I mean they won a bunch of these games without a lot of depth. I'm going to be honest. A lot of people will disagree with me, but past that first line, their depth falls off a cliff. I mean, 3 or 4 years ago, sure, they had more depth on the second and third line, but it still wasn't the best depth in the league.
No, it wouldn't be. I wouldn't consider it to be on Tampa or Colorado's level.
Without a doubt. And I think a very often overlooked portion of Cassidy's tenure is that he developed McAvoy and Pasta into 2 legitimate stars.
Yeah.
I don't understand how this firing happened past the fact that Don Sweeney just didn't like Bruce Cassidy.
And I think you're right about that. And he was there to kind of oversee Marchand's development into a legit superstar. So that's 3 guys that he was there to watch become legit superstars in this league. I think there was definitely, I don't know if it was Don Sweeney, I don't know if it was Cam Neely, I don't know if it was their owner, I forget his name right now. Maybe that's something we can ask Alex Barth, who's going to be joining us for an interview very shortly. He might have a little more insight because he's from Boston and covers them. But there must have been some sense up in that front office that he was no longer a fit for some reason.
I don't know.
But gosh, like when you run out those stats, they were also they were always top 5 in expected goals for, expected goals against, Corsi for. Any metric you look at, they were always at the top of those lists. I really just don't know kind of what the deal was. From what I heard, that there was some frustration, and I'm going to get on my soapbox now a little bit if you'll let me. There was a little bit of frustration that Cassidy wasn't giving young guys a chance, that he wasn't developing the young guys as well as he wanted to, that there was friction in their relationships. If you remember, Jake DeBrusk had a trade request earlier in the year. I think that's fine, right? That's fine. It could be valid if you expect a coach to develop young players and they're not. That's fine. You can maybe fire him for that. But there's 2 reasons why I disagree with that. If that's the reason for the firing, I disagree with it. There must have been more, but this aspect of it I disagree with, right? If you want to develop young players and contend for a cup at the same time, that's a big ask. And it's even harder if the guys you've been providing your coach are bad. They have been terrible drafting from 2017 to 2020, which is the players you'd expect to come into the team over recent years. I'm not including Pasta and McAvoy in that list because they're in their mid-20s now, and they got drafted in, I think, 2015 and 16. Only 3 of their draft picks from 2017 to 2020 have played games in the NHL, and they've all played, barring Jeremy Swayman, less than 40 games. The only other guys are Vakanainen, who they traded for, I think he was in the Lindholm deal, and Jack Studnicka, who has 6 points in 37 games. Right? So if you're asking your coach, we need more out of our young players, well, you got to draft me good players to develop because I'm trying to win a cup here. Right? And then and for any Bruins fans listening, this is going to be triggering for you. In 2015, that draft, they had 3 picks in a row, and they picked Zaboral, DeBrusk, and Senyshyn. 3 picks in a row. And
who went after that again? After. I don't. It was Barzal and someone.
Barzal, Shabbat, Connor. Oh. 3 right after. Could you imagine if you have any one of those guys, any one of those, not even and DeBrusk, just any one of those? Imagine having Shabbat, McAvoy in your first pair, Barzal or Bergeron Barzal is your 1-2 punch.
In the Boston development system too.
Absolutely. That team would have been and they were unreal, but that team probably gets another cup. over these past 3 years if they draft one or two of those guys instead of the guys that they drafted. That's my beef. If you're asking this, if you're saying we need you to be better with our younger players and win a cup at the same time, either you have to give me studs to develop, or you have no grounds to get mad at me for that. That's my opinion. Maybe there must have been more, and we'll ask Alex about that. But that idea of friction with the young players being a big reason for firing is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. I mean, you said it very well. I think all that is very true. I think over the last 5 years, the two best coaches in the league have been Mike Sullivan and Bruce Cassidy. And the most savage thing is that Don Sweeney told Bruce Cassidy that he had a job at the end of your meetings. That's crazy. I think in the interest of time, we'll say this really quickly. But I think Bruce Cassidy gets hired very quickly. I think he goes to Vegas. Bruce Cassidy isn't a rebuilding coach. He coaches to win. Vegas is in win mode. They play very gritty. I like his fit there. I will say 4 or 5 episodes ago, UFR did call the fact that Bruce Cassidy had a little bit of friction with Don Sweeney. Do you remember that? We said that at the end.
Absolutely.
Did not expect him to get fired, but we're going to talk to Alex about this. A lot of this firing talks about now whether Pasta is going to stay or he's going to go. I heard he wasn't happy with how they handled Cassidy, wasn't happy with how they handled Ricci. Do I think that this means he gets traded? No. Do I think he ends up resigning if Sweeney gets fired? Probably, because he does not like Don Sweeney. If not, I could see him go to a contender with cap space. I'll say it really quickly. The Kings jump to mind.
Yeah.
Right? If Cal Peterson takes that next step, the Kings have a legit shot next year. They have a lot of cap space. I mean, low-key, I think that's where Austin Matthews goes to if he doesn't resign, but that's a story for a different day.
Yeah, don't get started with that, please. We have 2 years before we start to panic, but I think, that's actually that's probably where he's going to go if he doesn't stay here. I do. I was, when I first read that the Pasta rumors, I was like, oh my gosh, he's leaving. Like, what the heck's going on? But over the past couple of days where it's gotten time to settle, like his agents come out and refuted those as agents do. I do think that he's going to stay. I think he's going to get a huge payday as well, as he deserves. But I think if there are any sort of seeds of friction among the players, between the players in the front office or between, anybody, that's not conducive to success down the road. And so I think Boston, this is maybe like one of those where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing. If, star players like Pasta are starting to get upset, there's got to be some reconciliation here. Something's got to happen, because if you have your star players being upset and there's not that cohesiveness that we know Boston to be sort of defined by, they got to figure that out. They really do. If he does get traded though, oh my gosh, LA freaks me out if they're going to be so good. Even the Devils, I think the Devils are so ready to take a next step. They've been trying for years. It hasn't worked. I think it's going to be a huge trade. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content, and find the link to our full podcast and all our socials in the description down below.
Also, don't forget to turn on those notifications to get live updates on new videos that we release.